Hello everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the book The Lady of the Rivers by Philippa Gregory. And in case you don't particularly know this author, she's written some other famous works that have to deal with royalty. In particular, she's focused on the Tudor dynasty, the Boleyns, and that sort of era. And in case you don't know who the Boleyns are, they're basically a family that gets involved with King Henry in, I believe it's around the 1500s. So I'm not a Tudor expert, but I will say that for the most part, a lot of her novels tend to focus on that era, in particular England. She really likes English history, and it really stands out in a lot of her novels. This one is a little bit different in that it tries to focus a little bit on France, but again the formula just kind of goes back to, yep, we're talking about England here, we're for England, woohoo, so I find that to be rather interesting that she really tries to focus in on England and English history. But not only is this novel different in that it does sort of focus in a little more on France, it's also different in the sense that she's doing a time period that is before the Tudor dynasty. This is in the 1400s, so it is a little bit going further into the past, and focuses in on the people that were significant during this time period. In particular, there is a focus on the Duke of Bedford in the beginning, who ends up becoming the main character's husband. And the main character that mainly Philippa Gregory tries to focus on is Chakrita. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm sure it's French, and I'm really bad at French, so but that's basically who the main character is, and it just kind of starts off with her life, and you kind of get a sense of who she is. There's also Joan of Arc in this particular work, which I found to be kind of funny how they just decided, oh yeah, she was around this time period, so let's put her in there. So I think that was an interesting point that they put in, that she decided to put in. But basically, she ends up marrying the Duke of Bedford, not out of love, but out of the fact that she has this high title, and the fact that he has this high title, so therefore back in those days you married for that reason, based upon your ranking in society. So she ends up marrying him, and she sort of discovers these things that deal more with alchemy and sort of folklorish medieval stuff that people try to, in this time period, sort of condemn because they think it's a form of witchcraft. So her husband sort of gets her into that, and you'll see how that plays out a bit. But the main point is that this novel is really trying to bring to the table is the characters and sort of the circumstances that were going on during the time period. So, although it is hard for me to talk about the plot because, again, I don't want to really reveal too much, but it is important to note that she does end up loving somebody else, and you'll kind of see how that plays out, and how it's rather difficult to be with someone because you want to be with them, during that time period. And for the most part, it follows sort of her journey to the English side, or the basically the English court, where she becomes really close to the queen there. And this queen I found to be a very interesting character, in that she has a lot of things that she has to go through as a queen, in particular dealing with her husband, who and the King of England during this time, he's a very, very odd king. You'll kind of see what I mean when you read the book, in that he's not this typical chivalrous, like, yeah, I'm the king sort of king. It's really hard to explain. He's very sort of self-conscious, and he's not really self-confident in himself, and I think that's what ends up leading to a lot of the things that end up happening within the novel, and you'll sort of see how that plays out. But basically, Chakrita and her lover, who eventually becomes her husband, and you'll kind of see how those circumstances play out, they become really close to the king as well. So really it is trying to address sort of these political issues that were going on during the time, and how loyalty plays a big role in this particular work. It almost bothers me to compare this to The Other Bowling Girl, but it's the only other Philippa Gregory novel I've read. And what I can say is that this one, I think, handles the history, the characters, and just the political struggles a lot better. I am way more invested in what's going on here than I ever was in The Other Bowling Girl. I mean, I feel like that these kinds of issues that were going on during the time period really are hammered down in this book a lot more, and they're a lot more interesting, I think. And The Other Bowling Girl, it sort of focuses in more on Anne Boleyn, and how she's just this manipulative little witch, and how her really nice sister is trying to put up with that. And there comes a point where I wasn't invested in listening to that play out over and over again, and go through sort of Anne Boleyn's journey to stardom and fame, and being close to the king. That really didn't appeal to me at all, because it's not something that's sort of universal, in that it affects everybody else that's surrounding the court, more as it just affects, yeah, okay, who's King Henry gonna marry now, you know? Okay, we're on wife number, is it 3, 2? I don't know. It's just almost a particular niche within English history that I think has been so overplayed, and it's not really that interesting, and it doesn't get me invested, especially since Anne Boleyn I found to be a very unlikable character in that particular book. This book, however, it gives you characters to like, it gives you characters to root for, it gives you characters that are complex, and it does so by providing these very harsh and difficult political relationships. You'll see how England ends up fighting with France. You'll see how England ends up fighting with themselves, and how, you know, loyalties are really split there. And you see how it affects all the people that surround Chakrita's life, because she is really the narrator of this story. So again, I think this was just better handled in how it portrays the characters as people that were going through this during point in history. compared to something like The Other Bowling Girl, which just focuses in on trying to make Anne's character fairly mean-spirited, but make you want to somehow root for her. I don't know. And then focus in on all these like little rumors that were going around about what she was doing, and we don't even know if these rumors are really true. So it didn't seem like that it was trying to take the book through a historical like perspective as it was trying to take it through all the different kinds of shocking rumors. And to me, those shocking rumors are just not interesting, and I could care less. You know, I could care less about what Anne did with her life. What I care about is the circumstances that she was in. And it seemed like more in The Other Bowling Girl she was focusing in on Anne as a character. And even the person who's narrating is her sister. So, again, I mean, I still feel like that this book handled the history just a lot better. But that's just all based on my personal opinion. But it is an interesting book if you like this kind of history, if you like this kind of direction that it goes into. It tries to really make their female characters interesting and sort of strong for the time period in dealing with all of the circumstances that they had to deal with. And it also makes a lot of likable male characters, and at the same time you realize their flaws and you kind of understand them as characters. So I think the way that she handled characters in this particular work was a lot better, and I think it was actually a really big improvement from The Other Bowling Girl, which happens to be one of her most famous works. And I mean, I hate to say that I think this is better than one of her most famous works, but at the same time I can't help but like this a lot better because of the reasons that I've mentioned. But that's really all you need to know going in, is that it's just based on Chiquita's life and how she goes through all these different circumstances, from being a Duchess of Bedford to being in close proximity to the Queen, to all of the wars that go on, and how her lover has to go out and fight during those times because he is a squire that I believe he becomes a knight eventually. But again, you kind of see how the fact that since he is on a lower pedestal in society compared to her, it makes it so that they're left for each other to be sort of scrutinized and put down and looked down upon. And you'll kind of see how they work through that, and they figure out how they can get through living this life during this time period together. So really, that's all you need to know going into this. For the most part, I think her language is relatively the same in that it's very straightforward, similar to The Bowling Girl, where I felt like the language is not, I think she tries to paint the world, but I think Marguerite George, who's another historical fiction novel, paints this a lot more delicately and with interesting language, whereas this one, it's just kind of a more straightforward a language that doesn't really focus in on trying to create the world for you, as it's more trying to create the characters and create the sort of atmosphere that surrounds this time period, and not really the time period itself and what it looked like, because it was hard for me at times in this book to get a clear picture of it. So just know going in that it's not intended to be so detailed, unlike Marguerite George works, which you can tell. I mean, this book is only like 300 something pages and it's like this thick, and then Marguerite George's novels are like this big. So if you don't mind that, then I'm sure you'll find this one enjoyable. And yeah, I think that's really all that needs to be addressed when it comes to this book. So if you're interested, I definitely would recommend to check it out. But I think that's really all I can say. But any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everyone, bye-bye, and thank you so much for watching.